The Church in the East. After the riots that nearly frightened him out of Constantinople, Justinian ordered the burned buildings rebuilt. The Hagia Sophia, Constantinople's biggest church, had been almost completely destroyed. So Justinian decided to hire two very famous architects to design and build a new church. This new Hagia Sophia had great domes, big windows, and huge open spaces. Inside, it was decorated with paintings and mosaics. Mosaics were pictures made by arranging colored pieces into a pattern. These pieces were called tesserae. Tesserae could be made out of stone, marble, glass, wood, clay, or even gold and silver. By setting the tesserae close together, artists could make beautiful patterns, and they could even make pictures of people and animals. Some mosaics were whole scenes, like a man feeding a donkey or an emperor and his whole court. Making a mosaic was slow and careful work. First, the artist would cover the wall or ceiling with a thin layer of plaster, which was thick, white, and sticky like glue. Then the artist would carefully and slowly begin to put tesserae into place. In a shop or house, the tesserae might be little pieces of colored glass, stone, clay, or wood painted different colors. But in a beautiful church or palace, the tesserae were more likely to be bits of marble or pieces of silver. The mosaics in the Hagia Sophia are especially bright and shining because the artist who made them covered glass cubes with gold and made the backgrounds of the mosaics pictures out of these glittering tesserae. Each glass cube was set into the plaster at a slightly different angle. So when the sun shone on the golden mosaics of the Hagia Sophia, light bounces off of the pictures in all different directions. The pictures seemed to glow in the light. Many people saw the mosaics in the Hagia Sophia because the church became the center of a whole group of Christians. Remember, after the fall of Rome, many Christians in the lands that had once belonged to the Roman Empire believed that the Pope was their leader. They believed that God had given him the job of looking after all Christians. But not all Christians agreed. Those Christians who lived in Constantinople, as well as many Christians who lived in Africa, Asia, and the eastern part of the continent of Europe, didn't believe that the Pope should be able to make decisions for the whole church. Instead, they thought that the leaders of the churches in Jerusalem, Rome, Constantinople, and two other important cities should join together to make decisions. And that Christians everywhere would join in saying, yes, those decisions are right. This was a very different way to think about the Christian church. And as time went on, the Pope, who was in the west of Europe, and the leaders of the Christian church in the east disagreed more and more about how the church should be led. Finally, the Christian church divided into two groups. Those who continued to believe in the authority of the Pope became known as Roman Catholics. The Christians' future east, including those in the Byzantine Empire, became known as Orthodox or Eastern Orthodox. Orthodox Christians called their leaders patriarchs. They had their own prayers and their own rites, ways of worshiping God. The Eastern Christians like to tell stories about Christians from the past who had been faithful to God. One of these Christians was called Nicholas. Here is one story that the Christians of the Byzantine Empire told about Nicholas. Nicholas lived in Asia Minor. His parents were Christians, but they died when Nicholas was very young, leaving him lots of money. Now, in those days, a girl could not get married unless her father gave a gift of money to her husband. In the village where Nicholas lived was a very poor family with 3 daughters. Each girl was in love with a young man and wanted to get married, but their father had no money to give them. One cold, snowy night, Nicholas was walking by the house of this poor family when he heard a girl weeping. He stopped and came closer. There in the window sat one of the daughters, crying and crying. He came even closer until he could hear what she said. "Oh," the girl wept, "I will never be able to marry the man I love. My sisters and I will live here in poverty for the rest of our lives, and all because my father has no money." Nicholas couldn't bear to hear such sadness. He ran quickly home and gathered as many gold coins as he could find into a bag. Then he ran back through the snow to the house where the girl sat weeping. He didn't want anyone to know who had brought the gold, so he drew his arm back, aimed carefully, and threw the bag up into the top of the chimney. A moment later, he heard the girl exclaim, "Look! Something has fallen into the fireplace. What is it?" And he crept away, satisfied that he had given the girl and her father money enough to arrange for her wedding. But later that night, he thought, what about her 2 sisters? Suppose they wish to get married too. Who will pay the money for them? So the next evening, Nicholas returned with another bag of gold. Again, he threw the bag down the chimney into the fireplace. And the next night, he came back with a 3rd bag of gold and did the same thing. The next spring, all 3 daughters were married. They wore beautiful gowns stitched with gold and wreaths of white flowers on their heads. Their father and mother danced together with joy at the wedding feast, and Nicholas watched, happy that his gift, given in secret, had brought so much happiness. As time went on, the story of Nicholas was told and retold by the Christians in the Byzantine Empire. Soon, Nicholas was called a saint, a person who had a special relationship with God. The Emperor Justinian built a cathedral to honor Saint Nicholas in Constantinople, and his story spread all over the world. In many countries, children get gifts on St. Nicholas's special day, December 6th. Sometimes they put their shoes next to the door. In the morning, the shoes are filled with chocolate coins wrapped in gold foil to remind them of the gold St. Nicholas gave to the 3 poor girls. Do you know that St. Nicholas has another name? Sometimes he is called Santa Claus. The story of Santa Claus comes from the story of St. Nicholas, a Christian from the Byzantine Empire.